What's going on, guys? I'm Pete and welcome to Retro Game Attic. I recently made a video countdown of the weirdest and obscure video game memory cards that many of you seem to enjoy. I also received a bunch of awesome suggestions of cards that I initially missed, so I've compiled most of this list based on your suggestions, so thank you for those as always. As with the last countdown, we're starting from the normal cards and progressing to the rare and downright weird ones. With that out of the way, here are 10 more of the weirdest and obscure video game memory cards. We're kicking off this list with the Xbox 360 memory card. These came in 64, 256, and 512 megabyte capacities and were somewhat popular during the early years of the 360 from 2005 to around 2008-ish. These aren't so much rare or obscure, but it's straight up crazy that a dedicated memory card was offered on a 7th generation game console. The Xbox 360 leaned heavily into downloadable and online gaming, so these cards quickly became obsolete once file size requirements became larger on games, system updates, etc. These were really only practical for people without hard drives and to transfer profiles and game saves to different consoles. The OG 360 also had 2 USB ports that didn't allow for memory expansion at release, but support was added later through an update. So you can use a formatted USB flash drive in lieu of the memory card, further pushing these dedicated cards into obscurity. The writing was on the wall for these memory cards from the get-go, and the final nail in the coffin was the omission of memory card slots from the redesigned Xbox 360S model in 2010. The lowest capacity 360S had 4 gigabytes of internal storage, and hard drives were able to be upgraded, so there really wasn't a need to keep the memory cards going. The 360 was the last home console to feature proprietary memory cards, so RIP little guy. Old school gamers will always think fondly of you. Next up is the GameTek 4 megabyte memory card for the Dreamcast. Now, the Dreamcast had a plethora of third-party memory cards released for it. Most were pretty innocuous and seemed to align with the Dreamcast's visual aesthetic. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. But these GameTek ones just looked a little off. As with most other third-party cards, they lacked the LCD display of the VMU. These featured transparent plastic in a handful of colors, a little metal ring at the end of the card so you can use it as a keychain or accessory, and either 2 or 4 red lights on the card's face indicating the different pages of the card. Think of the lights as separate memory cards themselves, so 2 lights equate to double the capacity, and 4 lights for 4 times the capacity of a standard memory card. The GameTek cards appear to be a bit larger than the standard Dreamcast memory card, so I would assume it would protrude out a little bit more out of the top of the controller. I don't have any photos to confirm, but here's an official Sega 4X card for comparison. The GameTek cards are Japanese exclusive, but the Yobo 2 megabyte memory card that we got in the US seems to be a close relative. They just don't look as cool in my opinion. These first 2 cards weren't anything too wild, so let's venture more into the obscure with the next entry. The Nokia N-Gage is a whole beast in and of itself. It was seen as kind of a joke at release, but I think it aged well for what it is, and the retro market is now embracing it. With that being said, it didn't sell well, moving around 3 million units, making it somewhat rare today. On top of its weirdness and obscurity, it used an overlooked storage format because of course it did. N-Gage games were on multimedia cards or MMCs, which are the precursor to SD cards. They look and function about the same as an SD card, just with slower speeds and lower storage capacity. You were able to store your N-Gage game saves to the MMC, making these by definition memory cards. So next time you're trying to impress someone, just let them know that the Nokia N-Gage's primary save format was MMC and you'll be sure to blow them away. Enough of the MMC, let's keep this obscure train going with the next card. This is the Panasonic 3DO FZ-EM256 memory unit, released exclusively in Japan. Without getting too much into the history of the 3DO, the console itself was produced by a handful of companies, Goldstar, Sanyo, and Panasonic, with this memory unit supposedly being compatible with each console variant. So we're off to a good start here. This is a rare accessory for an already somewhat low-selling game console. The 3DO was notorious for having a paltry 32 kilobytes of onboard save memory, with most single game saves occupying the entire system's memory. The FZ-EM256 has a massive 256 kilobyte capacity and seems like a solid solution. It's more of an external hard drive, but for the sake of this video, I'm calling it a memory card. The FZ-EM256 plugs right into the console's expansion port and requires a storage manager disk in order to manage your game saves. The memory unit was a beast too. It looks similar in size to a small game console itself. It seems like it's a must-have for any 3DO owner. Just be ready to shell out for one of these because they are super expensive. This is the granddad, the first, the OG of all memory cards, the Neo Geo Memory Card. There were game consoles that allowed game saves to the cartridges before it, but this was the first physical game console memory card. This thing was super revolutionary for the time. It was compatible with both the Neo Geo arcade units, the MVS, and the home console, the AES. Due to file size limitations and that the concept of memory cards was a new thing, it didn't function the same as a more modern memory card would. Certain Neo Geo games would let you save at certain instances, like a checkpoint at the end of a level or when you ran out of continues in the arcade, kind of like modern save states. You can also transfer games from the home to the arcade and vice versa with compatible games. These cards were really forward-thinking. The Neo Geo Memory Card laid the groundwork for memory cards going forward, with the Neo Geo card being a clear design inspiration for the PS1 memory card. And moving on, this next card isn't so much influential, but it is super rare. Here we have the GameCube Development Memory Card. There's nothing particularly special about this one. It looks like your standard first-party GameCube memory card with one glaring exception, that awesome gold label marked with development use. I couldn't find any concrete specs behind it, but I assume it's basically a standard memory card 59. And again, there are no official numbers out there, but I also assume these are pretty rare and they're now sought after by hardcore collectors. I found one currently posted on eBay for over $1,000. Listen, I'm all for obsessing over weird and rare stuff, but this is just wild. And more power to whoever is collecting these things because you're hardcore. I'll be the first to admit that I don't know much about the Commodore CDTV other than that it is rare. It was marketed as an all-in-one multimedia machine. Think of it as a less successful CDI, which already doesn't set the bar too high. Among its peripherals was the Commodore CDTV Memory Expansion Unit. They were proprietary memory cards, models CD1401 and CD1405, that had a capacity of 64 or 256 kilobytes respectively. These cards connected through a slot accessible on the CDTV's front panel and allowed storage of game progress as well as game scores if that was your thing. In addition to the memory card function, they were also capable of expanding the memory on the CDTV itself. Like I said before, the CDTV is obscure itself, and these cards are even more rare, with the 256 kilobyte card being extremely hard to find now. The next entry is the V-Rally 2 Championship Edition memory card for the PlayStation 1. It's shaped like a Peugeot 206 rally car featured on the game's cover art. This is a third-party release from Infogrames released exclusively in Europe. The card itself isn't anything special, just a standard 1 megabyte capacity. But that little Peugeot casing and paint scheme really make it stand out. It might look a little goofy protruding out the front of a PS1, but it's small enough to where it doesn't look offensive or anything. It's kind of a bummer that little car-themed memory cards didn't catch on. It would have been cool to have a whole line of little memory card car versions of the popular cars of the late 90s and early 2000s. PT Cruiser PS1 card, anyone? Seriously though, I would love to get my hands on one of these things, but online listings for them are limited at the time of making this video. Let's keep moving with themed memory cards with the next entry. Another PS1 memory card entry. Here's the Marvel 3D action hero memory cards from Nokia, released in 2001. There were a handful of Spider-Man themed characters, including Spider-Man, Venom, and Spider-Man Symbiote. I've heard that X-Men cards were released as well, but I can't find any evidence of them. These cards are essentially standard 1 megabyte memory cards, with little Marvel figures integrated into them. They do live up to their 3D action name. It looks like they're busting out of the PS1, so I gotta give them points for that at least. They don't look just tacked on like the other character memory cards I've talked about before. Spidey's leg does look a little weird propped up like that though. As with pretty much every other memory card on this list, these seem to be rare with not much information online about them. Regardless, they're a cool collector's piece or ideal for a huge Marvel fan. I think the Black Venom or the Symbiote cards would look pretty cool attached to a PS2. I saved the weirdest for last. This is the WonderSwan WonderWave. Released exclusively in Japan in 1999, the WonderWave is an infrared communication accessory that clips to the right side of the WonderSwan and is used to transfer character and game data between two WonderSwans, as well as communicate with the Sony PocketStation through its top-mounted IR sensor. I know I'm really stretching the definition of a memory card here, but hear me out. The PocketStation is technically a memory card, so I'm counting it. I can't wait to see the comments section about this choice. Moving on, the PocketStation compatibility was limited to just a few Bandai games for the PS1. Granted, the WonderSwan is a Bandai product, and they were a third-party developer for Sony, but it was still pretty wild to see cross-platform compatibility way back in 1999. That was it for my more strange and obscure video game console memory cards. Let me give a huge shout out to all the viewer comments suggesting these. I didn't even know about some of them or wouldn't have thought to add them to a list, so thank you to everyone that shot me an idea. What did you guys think? Was there anything that I missed? Do you want to get your hands on any of these memory cards? I know some of you are going to have something to say about that WonderWave inclusion. Either way, please be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. As always, thank you all so much for checking out Retro Game Attic. I really do appreciate you all. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you on the next one.